Hi everyone, in today's card tutorial I am going to show you how to do a masked blended background for a Halloween card. All the images are colored in the no line coloring technique, and today I actually have separated out that into a separate video that goes up at the same time, so that will be linked in the description down below and at the end of the video. First, we're picking out some masking paper. There's a lot of different masking papers out there. I used the Simonson stamps because that was what I picked up. That was what I could get at that moment. I've had this for at least a year. So one set of papers can actually hold you for a long time. I am using the Which Way is the Candy Stamp set, and I'm picking out some clouds and a moon that I want to make masks of. This is one of the few times when the matching dies wouldn't be working, because the matching dies would give you an outline, and I fussy cut these out without an outline to get that masked detail. I cut this masking paper down to 4 1/4 because it is going to also cover the front side of my card. The card is going to be a 4 1/4 and 4 1/4 square, so I picked out these mod square stitched dies, kind of trying to figure out how I want it on this little piece. Putting it up, I want the paper to overlap the backside a little bit of the card base, because then I won't get a line on the card base from my blending or start blending on the backside of the card base. So after cutting that little square out, I am then going in with my fussy cutter scissors and cutting out these little clouds. And I can say this is actually sped up by about 2 times, so I'm going even slower than this through all of the clouds, just moving the paper and not the scissors, and trying to be very, very careful. For the card base itself, I'm using some Nina 80-pound cardstock that I then score at 4 1/4. I cut it at 4 1/4, so on the shorter side, which is 8 1/2, so it makes a 4 1/4 card base. I then cut the stencil off a little bit because I felt it was a little bit too long. I peeled off a little bit of the paper, not all of it, just so that I can stick down the top of it, but I don't have to worry the back of it and trying to keep that off the paper while I'm trying to line it up. And then also it helps me, you can kind of pull a little bit in the kind of bottom of the masking paper and make it get a lot flatter, a lot easier. So I like that technique to laying down bigger stencils or bigger masks. I then take the little moon. I knew that I wanted to place my already colored images on the side there, so then I'm just trying to figure out how to line up the cloud and the moon, trying to get the clouds to be kind of parallel with these rectangles edges. Now I'm going to start blending. I'm going to use the Festive Berries and the Wilted Violet Ordinary Distress Inks. Here's the thing, I have been using the Bristol cardstock for a couple months now whenever I have done the blending. And going back to Nina, I realize how light you have to be with your tool when you blend and how long time it takes. So I was putting a little bit too much pressure on that tool, and it came out a little bit blotchy. I didn't get that good blend that I was looking for, and it was kind of annoying me already at this point, but I just kept on going, and I'm actually gonna end up switching over to the Distress Oxide inks after a while to kind of cover some of the blotchiness up. I do have a couple of tips when it comes to that, and that is one thing you have to remember is that going from Distress ink to Distress Oxide inks with blending is totally okay. However, Oxide inks can contaminate the ordinary ink pads, so you don't want to go back in the other direction. So if you are blending, you don't want to start with the Oxide inks to then go over with the ordinary inks, because you will contaminate your blending tools, and that can contaminate the ink pads. it's just a side note, but it's a good note to know. So that I started with the inks and then go to the Oxide ink was a good thing. But yeah, so starting to try to mix this, and it's just not looking the way I wanted. I can say removing the mask, usually when you remove the mask, it looks much better than you thought. Because you have all of this messy blending that is still on the mask, and when you remove the mask, that will disappear and you will feel like, okay, it didn't look that bad. But in this case, I think I actually really needed to have the Oxide ink on top. And one of the benefits is that the Oxide ink leaves this little bit of a chalky texture, which I really, really like. It has this like matte chalky texture. I think it looks awesome. And with a Halloween card and these characters, I felt it just fitted it perfectly. Then I'm using some water. I spray water in my hand and then I dip my fingers in and I spray that, because then I get these really drops, but I get them in a lot of different different sizes, not colors, sizes. So I really like that kind of background. I was a little bit afraid there when I saw, oh God, is that red up in that corner? But it's actually just a piece of tape. So I just scraped it off with my finger, or just put it back, and it was removed. So I'm kind of relieved. I used my craft knife just to get that paper just to lift a little bit. And yeah, that is the background done. Now we can continue with the rest of the card. So the next step is the sentiment. So I went through all of the sentiment and was thinking and trying to figure out, and then I found on the corner of it, it has a having a friend like you is such a treat, and it fit perfect on the card. The length of it was perfect and the sentiment was perfect. So I was like, okay, I didn't even think about this before I started making the card, but I was so happy that it worked out. I then used some foam tape on the back side. I love using the foam tape on several reasons. One is that I can cut it down to whatever size I want it to be, but also it's not super thick, which means that I can actually build with it and play with it a little bit. I have dots that is super, super thick. Like I have so much dimensional adhesive in my boxes that is crazy. Yeah, I really need to start using those up. But anyhow, I went through all of these little pumpkins that I had colored up and decided on going with one big and one small. I put the small one behind the big one because it framed the whole card a little bit better than having the smaller one in front of the big one. And then I knew that I wanted to put something on top of the little one. I had the frog, but I felt it was too light and it stood out a little bit too much. And I also had colored up the little kitty, so I knew that the kitty needed to be there. Like, kitties are super adorable. So yeah, and that's outside. So let's start with the inside. When I opened up the card, I realized that I had gotten red dye on the inside. This is one of the reasons why I usually have panels. That, and that I can use the Bristol cardstock, because I wouldn't use the Bristol cardstock as a card base, but I can use it as a panel. And if you work on the panel, you usually don't get all of those splotches on the inside of the card. But we're gonna fix that. But first, I actually added a sentiment on the inside, just to fill the page out. And sorry, I'm hitting the mic. That wasn't my meaning. But I also added those little pumpkins I had left from my little coloring session there. And then just to kind of mask that I did those splotches on the inside, I just added more. I just added a whole bunch of red splashes just around where those were. And then I added a little bit of purple splashes on the inside. I think I went a little bit overboard. I wished I had masked off just underneath the sentiment, but otherwise I think it kind of turned out pretty nice. So yeah. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, just comment down below. Any kind of questions, any kind of tips on how you want me, what you want me to do, anything. Also, if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And if you liked it, please thumb it up, because that means also a lot to me. But thank you again, and I'll see you later. Bye!